So at this point in our service, I'm supposed to tell you a story, and I will, in 1 second, because first, just seeing all of you here today, seeing so many children in our community in the week when finally we got approval for a vaccine for these children to take just is a little overwhelming. And so I want us to turn to page 279, and no, I know it's not Hanukkah, but that was the only place I could find the Shechianu blessing, because when we reach a moment in our lives that we've been waiting for, we give thanks to God for allowing us to reach this moment. And while we know that it's not over yet, there's still a long way to go, the news of this week with the vaccine for children, all of you in this sanctuary this evening just feels like an appropriate time for us to say a Shechianu. So we'll join together. It's the third blessing that you'll find on that page. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehecheyanu v'kiyamanu v'higiyanu lazman hazeh. We bless you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of all, for giving us life, for sustaining us, and for enabling us to reach this moment. Amen. So, the story. It's this Shabbat B'Yachad. We offer a story in place of a sermon you'll be pleased to hear. So there's a story told that several hundred years ago in Italy, it had been decided that the Jews were going to have to leave. And before they were going to leave, they said, okay, we're going to have a debate. The Pope is going to debate with a wise person on behalf of the Jewish community, and whoever wins the debate, if the Jews win, then they can stay, and if the Pope wins, then they're going to have to leave. Now, the problem was that the Jewish community spoke Yiddish, and the Pope spoke Italian, and so they decided that they would debate silently. So the day came, and they stood on either side with their community gathered around them. And as they stood in front of the community, the Pope began, and he raised 3 fingers. And the rabbi raised his 1 finger. And the Pope went, and the rabbi pointed down to the ground. And the Pope took out the wafer and the wine, and the rabbi took out an apple. And with that, the Pope said, I can't win. You win, the Jews can stay. So later, the Pope was with his cardinals, and they said to him, what happened? How did you get defeated? And the Pope said, well, first I held up my 3 fingers to represent the Trinity, and he held up 1 finger, reminding me of the unity of one God. And then I told him that God is everywhere, but he reminded me that God is right here where we are standing. And then I took out the wine and the wafer to tell him about the sin, that Jesus died for our sin in that way. And he took out an apple and reminded me of the original sin. And at that point, I just knew he was going to have an answer to everything, and I couldn't win. And that same time, in the Jewish community, they gathered around this wise old man and said to him, how did you win? And he said, you have 3 days to leave. And I said, we're not going anywhere. He said, you're going to be spread across the earth. And I said, we're staying right here. And then for some reason, he took out his lunch, so I took out mine. It's a nice story that probably never happened, almost certainly. But it's a story that reminds us about certain moments in our history of the tension that there might have existed between the Jewish and Christian communities. And if we want to look back to the beginning, the rabbis suggest that it all starts in this week's Torah portion with the story of Esau and Jacob. They set up the situation of these 2 twins as being rivals, enemies with one another. They tell us the story at the beginning, and this is all from the Torah, that they were fighting in Rebekah's womb so much that she cried out to God. And then when they came out, Esau came out first, and Jacob, not wanting to be left behind, held onto his heel to try and come out almost as quickly as him. And then one of the first stories we read about these two brothers is that Esau was out in the field and he came back and he was so hungry. And in the house, Jacob was preparing some kind of soup. And rather than give his brother the soup, he said, "Sell me your birthright and then you can have some soup." And so Esau sold him the birthright. And that would be bad enough, but it doesn't end there, because we then get towards the end of Isaac's life. When Isaac's eyes are dimming, he says to Esau, "Come, go out, hunt some game for me. Bring it to me that I might eat it, and then I'll give you my blessing." And we read that Rebekah was listening in at the tent, and she told Jacob, "Go get a kid from the flock, and I'll prepare it just the way that your dad likes it, and we'll pretend that you are your brother Esau, and you'll receive the blessing." And Jacob says, "But he'll know it's not me." And she says, "Don't worry, we'll put the goat skins on your hands, because Esau, we are told, was a very hairy man, and he'll never know the difference." And Jacob does as his mother instructs him, and he steals the birthright. And at that point in our story, Esau comes in afterwards. Isaac realizes he's been tricked. Esau cries and wails at what his brother has done to him. And the enmity between them is done. That's it. And from them we get the idea Esau Christianity and Jacob Judaism. And often we finish with this week's Torah portion. But in 2 weeks' time, we continue their story. Jacob has gone off, he's worked for Laban, he's married Leah and Rachel, brought with him 12 children, a lot can happen. And he's on his way back to meet with his brother, and Jacob is fearful what's going to happen. He knows what he did, stealing the birthright and then running away. But we read about their moment of reuniting. And despite all of the fear that Jacob has, when they reunite, Esau falls on his neck, they weep, and embraces him. And then we get these beautiful words where Jacob says to him, "If you would do me this favor, accept from me this gift, for to see your face is like seeing the face of God." And we have that beautiful idea of their reunion. And so there's a problem sometimes in our text with where we choose to end a story. On this Shabbat B'Yachad, as we tell a story, that if we end it this week, we end it with Esau and Jacob as enemies, and we as descendants, inheritors of that tradition. But if we end it where we should really end it, which is in 2 weeks' time, we end with brothers reunited, embracing each other, and declaring that in each other they see the face of God. And I think for our story this Shabbat, when we think about Jewish-Christian relations and so many others, that's where I want to end it. That's where we want to get to, where we can embrace one another and see God in the face of each other. Shabbat Shalom.